And now I'm gonna check my email. Dear Trekosophy, I obsessively listen to every podcast of yours. I think that Chris is a genius, Ash is the most beautiful woman in the world, and Ben is a freaking idiot who needs to shut the hell up. Anyway, I'd like to know, what are your least favorite and most favorite episodes of Star Trek? My favorite is Spock's brain. Crap long and prosper, Mud Jr. Dear Mud Jr., thank you for your kind letter. We are taking your feedback under careful consideration, and after much deliberation, we have decided that your email will be deleted. I'm gonna go play Elite Forces 2 now. Bye.
And welcome to Trekosophy, the Star Trek philosophy podcast. Tonight's crew consists of New Zealander Ash Hume.
Precious! My precious is gone!
Benjamin McLean.
Before I drink a tall glass of Wactagino, I like to eat about 147 fluffy puff marshmallows. Seriously, folks, they're the best.
And I'll be your host tonight, Chris McGee, in this Philosophy Light episode of Trekosophy.
I was just really excited about the return of Homestar Runner, which is there after a very long break of several years. They are finally back to making cartoons, and I'm just totally excited about that. I love Homestar, and that's why I wanted to do a Homestar Runner intro. Also because
meanwhile, Ash and I could care less.
Yeah. I kind of steamrolled that one because I really wanted to do that. Salute to Homestar Runner on Trekosophy. But also the idea for this episode kind of came from a Strongbad email, which is bottom 10, in which Strongbad gives his 10 worst things he can think of. And the idea is we give our bottom few and top 5. I think we ended up with bottom 5 and top 5 Star Trek episodes and things. Just because that just seems like an easy topic to do. Yeah. Because we're kind of all busy right now.
Yes. And 5 does not require any more than you can count on your fingers, which is about the level of maths that we can do.
Well, at least we're doing better than Valve. Anyway, Valve, okay. Valve can't count to 3. It's a thing. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're each going to take in turn to give our bottom 5 least favorite Star Trek episodes, and then if we have time, we'll move on to doing our top 5 favorite Star Trek episodes. And I think we need to come up with an order to put us in. I'd suggest.
I got a lie here I can roll and see whoever comes out on top.
Oh, okay. I would have suggested Ash, then you, then me, because I have to put myself last if I. No, that's not. Well, Ash, then me, then you is what I'd suggest, because that's A, B, and C. But
ABC. Hey, there you go. All right. I never noticed that. All righty then.
So we.
Before we waste any more time, then, Ash, what's your bottom one that's not your least favorite, but maybe number 5 or whatever you went up to on your list?
What is your most favorite of your least favorite? Number 5.
My most favorite of my least favorite. Number 5 is Alive. And that's drum roll, please. Encounter at Farpoint.
Oh, wow.
Really? Why does that make it into your bottom 5?
Which is the first episode of Next Generation, for anybody who can't quite remember and has been living under a rock.
Since the 80s.
First of all, well, it goes number 5 and not number 4, 3, 2, or 1. It gets about a free pass for being the first episode. Everybody's not quite used to, I guess, their roles and, production values and all that of Next Gen. Goes to bottom 5. It has some halfway good ideas, but I felt that the execution of those ideas was quite poor. There's there's a few. It's very, I guess, disjointed storytelling wise. As could hand out a few Razzies for bad acting for certain. Especially, sorry if they listen to this, which was unlikely. Denise Crosby and Marina Sirtis. I don't think they were quite into their roles yet, and they had some very bad moments. And that humanity, if you had, especially Yaz rant at the court or whatever, that was terrible. And
yeah, it kind of was. I don't know if I'd, but that kind of terrible stuff happens in so many Star Trek episodes that I hate to pick on that one. But my views that compare Encounter at Farpoint with Emissary, which is the DS9 premiere, was actually the very first episode of Trekosophy. That was our topic, the very first day we ever did a Trekosophy. So that episode has had a long history in the annals of Trekosophy at this point. All right. I was supposed to go next, aren't I?
Yep, your turn.
ABC, go.
Okay. Well, the fifth one on my bottom 5 is probably Star Trek 4 because it was cheesy. And that's really all I have to say about it because the problems with Star Trek 4 are fairly obvious.
Well, obvious to you. The rest of us find the movie very entertaining, at least, even if it is flawed.
I just thought it was cheesy. I watched it and I'm just annoyed that they didn't make a better movie when I watch it.
Beautiful, delicious ham and cheese on toast. That's what Star Trek 4 is.
I don't know if it still is, but it was for a long time the top grossing Star Trek film. Up until at least I think maybe Insurrection, but I don't know, one of the new ones.
I think it kind of had what they call on TV tropes a broken Aesop, I guess. Or I mean, I don't know if that's the right trope, but just kind of a retarded Aesop. It was kind of just like, whatever message you have about message you have about saving the whales isn't saved by making such a ridiculous movie. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, moving along. All right. My number 5 on bottom 5 is The Outrageous Okana, whatever, from Next Generation. Only real reason that I picked that one was because it was a dumb episode. The A plot was predictable. The B plot was throwaway completely. Data wants to laugh, but we all know he's not going to be able to. I mean, it was really useless.
Was that the one? Was that the one where I know in one of the movies, Data says that joke you made several years ago? I get it now.
That was never actually shown. Actually,
that was never actually shown. But Geordie was supposed to have told that joke during the Farpoint mission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind then.
The Ferengi in the gorilla suit has to go.
I can't remember. I can't remember what's going on in this outrageous Okana. What was happening in it?
The main story was a rogue guy, basically kind of like a Han Solo kind of guy, has been ferrying across these two lovers from rival worlds, kind of a Romeo and Juliet sort of situation.
Sort of ripoff?
Yeah, ish, except without the tragic ending. And
so it's like a Disney Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, there you go. It's like a Disney Romeo and Juliet. Exactly.
Well, I mean, Lion King is the Disney Hamlet, and it wasn't so bad.
Well, Lion King was good.
Good point. All right, so that's that one. I could go into further detail, but we're going to try and keep them a little brief if we can. So, back up to A, number 4.
Number 4. Okay, number 4. It's going to be a DS9 episode. Not because I don't like DS9, but because I remember their episodes better. Number 4. Number 4 is Rejoined. which is where Dax meets up with an old Trill friend of. I think he's I think it's one of her.
Yeah, this was the DS9
or something.
This was the DS9 lesbian episode.
Yeah, that's the one. So before we get any hate
degenerated to that very short title appellation.
Before we get to any hate mail, the reason I don't like it is not because of the lesbian thing. I'm fine with the lesbian thing, but the reason I don't like it is because the Dax and Khan, the other Trill, had absolutely no chemistry whatsoever. I mean, this woman was totally dull and boring and lifeless, and oh my god.
I think that was probably because neither of the actors were lesbians.
Well,
period.
Yeah, I think a better actor though can fake lesbian.
I mean actresses. I meant actresses. Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned,
I think a better actor can fake lesbian pretty well.
I thought the whole lesbian thing was kind of stupid in that episode, but yeah, overall,
almost shoehorned in.
But. Yeah, the way it even if I didn't have philosophical problems with that idea. Though it's just bad writing in any case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. On to Ben.
Oh, right. My bottom 5. Number four is almost every episode of Enterprise.
Is that even allowed here? I mean...
Well, I was couldn't really... It's hard to come up with specific least favorite Star Trek episodes, but I might say that in general, if it's an Enterprise episode, I probably don't like it unless it's on a list of the good episodes, which there's only a few good Enterprise episodes, in my opinion. And so it's hard to choose just one. So I'm just putting
all right.
Enterprise as number 4. Why? Well, it just didn't feel like a Star Trek show. Also, I'm going to have an actual Enterprise episode later in my list, and I might talk about it more then. But generally, Enterprise just doesn't feel like a Star Trek show. And
the opening theme song sucks.
Yeah, they replaced the beautiful music with a terrible pop song. Okay. But that I could forgive that if they had delivered a solid Star Trek show. But it doesn't feel like a Star Trek show. It feels like
they were trying to get away from Star Trek. That's why for the first 1 or 2 seasons, they dropped the name Star Trek from the title. It was just Enterprise.
And that was dumb.
If you're trying to get away from Star Trek, why?
It felt like
Star Trek.
It felt like a Quantum Leap spinoff with a few crappy Star Trek references in it. And it was just terrible. And the way it contradicted the canon so often, even that could be forgiven if it was awesome enough, because comic books do that. And if they're awesome, we're okay with it. But it didn't deliver. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't working. Anyway.
All right, number 4 for me, Shades of Grey from Next Generation, the season ender for season 2. And that was because most people know the writer strike was happening at that time. The season itself was abbreviated because they didn't have the full 26 episodes. I think they only had like 18 or 20 or something. And so they had to scramble to come up with some sort of season ender, and so they made a clip show. Let's steal clips from the first 2 seasons and cram them all together, loosely tied together with a threadbare plot, and throw it up on the TV screen and see what happens. So that's what happened there.
Did they even put that on the DVD? Because I don't remember even seeing. Oh, yeah,
and the Blu-ray.
I don't remember even seeing that. This is why unions suck.
Yes, and that's why they never did it again.
Yeah.
After this one. So, I think I've said all I need to say about that one. Number 3 for Ashum.
Number 3. Okay, this is going to be the controversial one, so...
Oh, well, we'll try to keep it brief here if we can.
This is going to be the one that everybody hates me for mentioning, that I do not like, The Visitor.
Oh, wow. Yes, that is controversial.
I hate it.
Deep Space Nine, I take it, yeah.
I really don't like it. It's one of the few episodes that I just cannot watch again.
Is it because it makes you cry?
No, it doesn't. It's actually quite the opposite. It's actually quite the opposite. I think a lot of the story depends on actually being able to relate to this Melanie character, which I don't. I hate her. She's my least favorite character in all of DS9. And number 2 is actually feeling something for Jake, and I don't. I don't feel it. As I watch it, I'm watching this thing, and if I feel anything, it's like I would rather scrape my eyeballs out with a plastic spoon than sit through 10 minutes of this level of really quite boring episode. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I don't connect with it. I don't connect with Jake. I don't connect with Ben in it. No.
Well, I kind of do, but then again, I relate it to some of the sci-fi sources they're drawing on, like the Foundation series from Asimov and the Ender's Game, the later Ender's Game books, which kind of have this sort of weird thing about someone from the past kind of popping up all of a sudden because of the time dilation of fast and light travel. And so this idea that Cisco can sort of jump through time to see the future of his family is kind of, I think that's kind of an interesting concept. And I also do kind of identify with Jake Sisko as his being a writer and all that. So but if you aren't able to follow that stuff, I can kind of see why it would be kind of boring for you.
I mean, I get the concept and all. I mean, I have no problem with that.
And it's actually
I guess you could say I should relate to Jake being a writer. You know, I'm a writer too.
You're a writer, yeah.
But I don't know, Melanie, she pisses me off. I can't stand her.
Well, I mean, it was based on a real life happening. A fan. High school student simply turned up at J.D. Salinger's house.
Really?
A reclusive writer, hadn't published in years, and he gave her an interview. And I don't know who J.D. Salinger is, actually. Sorry.
Oh, I don't even know who that is. Tell me who that is, please.
J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you.
But famous 1980 interview.
Yeah. I know who that is now.
It wasn't me sort of pointed that out, but somebody else also pointed out that actually Melanie's kind of creepy.
She is that a little bit. And there was one moment when
around this guy's house.
Before the commercial break.
If Jake had lived a week, she probably would have turned a cable guy on him or something like that.
I do have to admit,
she's like a stalker.
I do have to admit, thinking that there was something a bit creepy about that. You're right.
And there was one moment right before a commercial break. He says to Melanie, "I'm dying" or something. You think, "Oh crap, he's getting ready to die." And then right back from the commercial break, he says, "Oh, I'm not really dying, but I am old. I will be dying soon, eventually, but not right now."
Yeah, when you watch it on the DVDs,
stupid thing. Yeah,
when you watch it on the DVDs and stuff, you don't really notice where the commercial breaks are.
Well, you kind of do, but
I don't. I don't notice that a lot, so I didn't get that that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
But now that I think about it, you're right. Wow, that must have been a really dumb commercial break right there.
Okay, so that's fine. Controversial. We may disagree with you or not, but that's your decision.
Most people do, but that's okay.
Number 3 on my bottom 5 would have to be Profit and Lace from DS9. I get it that you want to make a point about women being equally capable in business and some of that, and so it isn't even a philosophical problem with the episode as such. I kind of am very much opposed to third wave feminism and have been very, very vocal about that in public. But that's not why this episode is bad. The reason this episode is bad is because even though the point it's making is somewhat a valid point, Quark did not have to dress up as a female and get someone licking his ear to make that point.
Did that even happen?
Yes.
Licking the ear?
Yes. That was just...
Well, I think the writers were just going for...
That was not necessary. It kind of just grossed out the audience without really making the point it was trying to make. It's just like The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. He was trying to do a critique of capitalism, but what he actually wrote in his book, The Jungle, was about how gross some of the prepackaged meats like Spam really are. And that's all that people remember from his book. And so they didn't really convert to Marxism. They more sort of converted to let's not eat Spam. And so what he said after reading the book, after all this happened, is his famous quote was, "I aimed for the public's heart and hit it in the stomach." And that's kind of what Profit and Lace does. It's trying to make this point about gender issues and stuff, but by putting Quark in a dress, it kind of more hits you in the stomach with, ew, that was really a bad wardrobe choice for the, really bad choice on the part of the makers of the episode. So that's why Profit and Lace is bad. Is that concise enough?
Say about
All right. Is
got
that
a bit more to
concise
say
enough?
about that, but I'll save it for honorable mentions.
I think you're totally wrong. I think Profit and Lace was just meant to be a funny episode by the writers. But that's me.
I think it's really sexist, actually.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Why is it sexist? Who is it sexist? Which gender is it sexist against?
Well, sexist against I found that seemed to be quite sexist against women. So what you have this idea that women can be just what they want to be, and in order to promote that idea, you have to get this Ferengi to put forward every single terrible stereotype, terrible caricature, paper cut, two-dimensional stereotype about women that you absolutely possibly can.
So you think that Armin Shimmerman's performance is kind of sexist against women? Not necessarily the script.
Well, the script I think just about everything about that scene. I think it's like, yeah.
Okay.
It's the worst scene. It's the worst 10 minutes of Star Trek. Let's put it like that. All
right. Well, I don't think it's the worst. I think it's 3 out of 5 for being the worst. There's still two episodes that are worse than this one, in my opinion. Anyway, we'll keep going. What's your number 3, Chris?
Now that we have spent more than enough time on Profit and Lace.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Deserves its own episode, maybe. All right, my number 3 of the bottom 5 is Rivals from Deep Space Nine.
Why is everybody hating on Deep Space Nine?
We know Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but everything on my top 5 and bottom 5 are going to be from TNG and Deep Space Nine because those are the series that I know the most.
Oh,
almost by heart.
This is the casino episode. I mean, not the casino.
Yes.
This is the luck episode.
Essentially,
the one with Prince Hunkerdunk in it.
Yeah, whatever.
The luck episode where they change probability.
Yeah,
I just remember him as being the vampire in Fright Night. You know?
Oh, it's the same guy from Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Wow,
he's really good in Princess Bride.
They have a bunch of Princess Bride people in DS9. I mean, there's Grand Nagus Zek is the inconceivable guy.
Yep.
So, anyways, why is this episode so bad, Chris?
It is. Actually, how do I put this into words? It's dumb. It really is. Yeah. The idea that luck is something that can be measured and is actually a phenomenon that is, what do they call it? Neutrinos spinning other direction or something?
The probability thing.
Probabilities and stuff. No. I don't go for that.
As dumb pseudo science or non-scientific Star Trek premises go, this wouldn't even get in the top 30 as far as I'm concerned, because there are so many dumb Star Trek premise, non-scientific premises or pseudo-scientific premises in Star Trek that I didn't even analyze this episode on that level, because as far as I'm concerned, and I've said this before, Star Trek technology is magic, period. I mean, anyone who wants to pretend that Star Trek technology is somehow science or is any different from Harry Potter, I think they're full of crap. It's just Harry Potter. It's perhaps explained a little bit better, but in principle, it's still whatever the plot requires will happen. And an engineer did it instead of a wizard did it. But other than that, it's the same crap.
I just like the Sharon O'Brien playing racquetball.
I thought, oh yeah, that was great. I liked that part, and I liked this episode. I thought it felt like if you think of it more as being a sort of like a fantasy than being sci-fi. I know Orson Scott Card's rule is that if it has metal walls on the cover or bolts, then it's science fiction, and if it has trees, then it's fantasy. But what I mean is, if you think of this not being so much as a science fiction premise as being like a fairy tale, it's a lot like the old fairy tales where someone's luck changes. You know, it's like the fisherman finding the magic talking fish. You know that story?
Yeah.
It's a lot like that story because he finds the sort of magical object which changes his fortune for the better, but then the consequences of it catch up with him, and he ends up right back where he started. It's very
maybe it would have ended up better if they'd been more sort of fairy tale-ish and less tried a bit less hard to be sciencey about it.
Well. I mean, what they do in Star Trek is they take a fantasy premise and then they open up the pages of popular mechanics or popular science and they circle a few buzzwords and then put the buzzwords in front of whatever it is they happen to want to do. And that's why in the original series we had photon torpedoes, and then in the Next Generation we had, what were they, plasma?
Quantum torpedoes?
No, they're still photon. They're still photon torpedoes.
They still use photons, but quantum torpedoes are stronger or something.
That's it.
They were introduced in, I think, Deep Space Nine.
Okay, but first we had the photon torpedoes, and then when the scientific buzzwords changed, then they became quantum torpedoes, and that's all they did. They just circled whatever the latest buzzword was in popular science. So there's really no real scientific basis for Star Trek. It's just they use science terms.
You've been over this so many times.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm repeating myself.
And whether or not I made a good choice in adding that on my bottom 5 list, it's too late now.
Well, it's certainly not going to be in anyone's absolute all-time favorites. So, meh.
Let's move on to number 2s now. Yep. Ash.
Okay, number 2. Skipping right to the very last season of Next Generation, which is a good season overall, but it has this one in it, and it's called Journey's End. And that is the one where
Wesley says goodbye episode, right?
Wesley says goodbye episode.
Yeah, it was a little bit corny.
I hate the Traveler. I'll say that right now.
You don't like the Traveler.
I don't like the Traveler. He is creepy. He is creepy as hell.
He is really
a creepy guy.
Yeah, it didn't really work. I can see how someone before the episode was actually produced could look at the script and go, yeah, that makes sense. I can see that working. But it just didn't actually work. It ended up being corny and
it tied up the loose ends really too quickly, I think, in the end.
And poorly. I really felt like it made new loose plot threads, which never got picked up again by any of the subsequent Star Trek series. I kept expecting them to sort of hire Wheaton to come back in Voyager or something for a guest episode where the Traveler turns up again, but nope.
Oh, don't wish for that.
Well, I kind of was expecting it, and that never happened.
Yeah.
So, of course, they could never do it now.
All right, so on to Ben, number 2.
Oh, right. Number 2. This one gets into more of have philosophical objections to the message of the episode, and that is, who watches the Watchers? In that one, Picard says, "Your report describes how rational these people are. Millennia ago, they abandoned their belief in the supernatural. Now you are asking me to sabotage that achievement." And I'm like, wait a minute. Abandoning their belief in the supernatural is an achievement? And that statement all by itself gives the lie to the whole idea of the Prime Directive.
Now, wasn't Gene Roddenberry agnostic or atheist himself?
Oh, definitely. But this
That
the
kind
thing is,
of describes it right there.
This shows the total hypocrisy of Starfleet and that basic idea of the Prime Directive, because he is going to impose his belief that abandoning the supernatural is an achievement on this planet. And it suggests that he does that in general on any other planet. So to get people to not believe in the supernatural, that's not interfering. But getting them to believe in the supernatural is interfering. No. there's a total collapse in the basic logic of the Federation and everything it stands for in that statement.
Well, I kind of disagree with you a little bit there.
Yeah, on that particular episode, he was sort of undoing.
Yeah,
something rather
it
than
it would be the right thing to do to undo the false belief that they accidentally tricked that planet into. Certainly. And certainly,
I'm an atheist, and I find that speech a bit iffy. So
he just has beef with this one statement. That's all.
But it's just this assumption that believing in abandoning your belief in the supernatural is an achievement that makes them no different and no better than any of the closed-minded ideologues that they're complaining about, because their anti-supernaturalism is just as dogmatic and just as prone to all kinds of evils as a belief in the supernatural. And history shows us this, because there has never been a successful atheistic regime that has lasted over the course of several generations in history.
Well, that's on our planet, not on Mintaka 3.
Yeah, but still, even so, it shows that all tolerance of alternative viewpoints is condescension. Okay? All tolerance of alternative viewpoints to the Earth materialism that Picard is basing his philosophy on here is condescension to avoid war, but it's not because we actually value, disagreement over perennial questions in philosophy. And that's just, it's so arrogant.
Sounds to me like we could do an entire episode on this episode, Who Watches the Watchers. We may have already. I don't even remember.
It has come up before, yeah. But anyway, that one goes in my bottom 5 for that dogmatic assumption that it makes there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. My number 2 from Next Generation, The Last Outpost. This is our introduction to the Ferengi and very non-threatening, bouncy way. And that's about the whole point of the episode is, hey, here's our new villains. Oops, they're not really villains after all.
Ewoks. They're Ewoks.
This is the one where
Silly and
said that he broke the Ferengi in the first place. Is that?
Yeah, he was in this episode, that's right. And the other plot with the planets and the whatever civilization it was that was asleep there or whatever and died out long ago or something. It's nothing. Absolutely nothing. And Sun Tzu, the teachings of Sun Tzu.
Yeah, the Memory Alpha says on one of the photo captions on Memory Alpha has mysterious energy builds. Like, how often does that happen on Star Trek?
Oh, never.
Wait a minute, Sun Tzu. I don't remember Sun Tzu being in that one.
I thought it was.
Well, Sun Tzu, that's actually a real thing. I mean, that he wrote.
Yeah.
He's the author of the
He
Art
was
of
just
War.
mentioned.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's just like a passing mention, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's mentioned twice in the episode. That's
Well,
all. It's the beginning and the end.
Sun Tzu's The Art of War is just
Khan, that's it.
if you want to begin to understand the subject of strategy, that's the first thing you have to read.
We know.
If you want to, yeah. So I actually really I think that's a great book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and that one alien in there, besides the Ferengi, of course, had him in old age makeup for no reason. It's not like they were going to have him de-age into a younger man or anything. It was stupid. Okay, all right, moving along then. Number one, I'm going to have drum rolls.
Wait. We ought to do our honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions, that's right. Okay.
I think my honourable mention, my dishonourable mention has already been dishonourably mentioned before.
What is that?
It was Profit and Lace.
Okay, well, see, we're going to have some overlap here and there.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about it again.
We don't.
All
Good,
right.
thank you.
And
your dishonorable mention.
My dishonorable mention that was bad, but it wasn't quite bad enough to get onto my list of badness, is The Naked Now from Next Generation, because it was a stupid episode, period.
We couldn't think of anything to write, so we'll just steal a plot from the original series.
That wouldn't even be so bad if it wasn't such a terrible plot from the original series. Anyway.
Yeah, and it was poorly executed too.
Yeah. So what about yours, Chris?
My dishonorable mention is The Neutral Zone. Also another first season Next Generation episode. Yeah, that's the one where it's two plots, and one of them is, hey, people are thawed out from the 20th century and hilarity ensues, except it's not hilarity at all. And the other plot is, hey, we're the Romulans, we're back.
That's got Michael Limo in it.
We're the Romulans, we're back.
Yeah. Remember us from the original series? We're back now. We're going to be in the Next Generation now. That's all it was.
That's great. That's
it
great.
was such a nothing episode. Wow.
I mean, your description of it is great. Okay. Now, Ash, what would you say is the worst of the worst Star Trek episode of all time? And this is where we actually need the drum roll here.
Yes, we'll have a drum roll.
Okay, there's maybe a little overlap with Ben, but my worst of the worst of the worst Star Trek episodes of all time that is completely, totally bad is 2 Days, 2 Nights.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Towards the end of the first season of Enterprise, you get something like a 3 to 5 episode build up towards this episode, and it is a Riser episode.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that.
And
as Enterprise episodes go, I wouldn't put it in my worst Enterprise episodes list, but it was bad. You're right.
I hated it. I hated this one. I was just watching this and I'm thinking,
it was bad.
I'm not sure I can watch this twice because it is so boring and nothing is happening. Nothing happens in this episode. There's practically...
Well, didn't it have some kind of a James Bond-ish sort of spy subplot?
A few things happened, but there were like 5 subplots and they were all boring. So...
I remember there were 5 subplots and 4 of them were boring, if I remember right. So, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's I spent the whole episode waiting for some kind of conflict to happen, like something go wrong for these people, something happen, and it all turned out to, I don't know, fizzle into nothingness. And I really wanted
I kept
Archer
expecting. Oh, sorry.
And I really, my greatest wish was that Archer would just take his phaser and shoot that yappy dog right between the eyes. Shoot that woman's yappy dog.
I kept expecting it to end with a chase with a big chase scene where everyone chases the man in the gorilla suit, and with the Benny Hill theme, and the hallway of doors where they're all going in and out of all the different doors,
Benny Hill theme might have made it slightly better, actually. I don't know.
And then inside the gorilla suit, it turns out to be that yappy dog.
And guess who it was directed by?
Who?
Michael Dorn.
Oh no, because Michael Dorn also directed my best one.
Oh, we're never gonna get him on. We're never gonna get him as a guest on Trek.
Sorry, Michael.
Oh, that's terrible.
Oh well.
Okay. Well, sorry, but that definitely wasn't Michael Dorn's best work right there.
Wasn't that woman Day Young? Wasn't she?
Yeah, she was on a couple of
She
things.
was Hannah Bates. The Masterpiece
Hannah
Society.
Bates, and she was also Odo's girlfriend on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, Simple Investigation. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thought she looked familiar. Okay. Ben.
Okay. In my opinion, the absolute worst Star Trek episode of all time. None of them are worse.
At all.
None of them are worse than this. This is as bad as it gets.
And if you are a regular listener to Trekosophy, you already know what it is.
The very worst episode is Dear Doctor from Enterprise.
Dun, dun, dun.
This is the worst Star Trek episode ever. And
it's all because Phlox commits genocide, right?
Well,
he doesn't.
Yeah. Phlox in this episode, it's not just that. It's also, if I remember right, it just wasn't very good either. Anyway, but the real reason that I hate this episode is its basic message is just so fundamentally wrong. So there's two species of aliens on this planet. One of them is economically successful, and the other ones are kind of in a dependent position where they depend on help from the economically successful aliens to keep on going because they haven't built their own infrastructure really, and they aren't taking care of themselves very well. And the more economically successful species turns out to have a disease that's killing them, and they're all going to die if they can't come up with a cure. And they appeal to the Federation for help. And so Archer tells Dr. Phlox to come up with a cure for this disease that is killing millions of people. And the doctor develops a cure, but discovers that it is a genetic disorder. And he believes that if the more successful, economically successful species doesn't die, then the less economically successful species will never reach its full potential. And so he believes that because it's a genetic disorder, this is his reasoning, not mine, because it's a genetics disorder, it's somehow inherent in the nature of the more successful alien species. And so even though he has a cure that could save people who are dying right now, he's not going to, because politics. That is so wrong. There is no justification for that. He has a cure and he's not going to give it because of his political opinions about the state of the economy on the planet. That's just so wrong. And
that's where the prime directive should come into play.
Then Archer says something which suggests that the Federation agrees with Dr. Phlox's decision and is eventually going to base the prime directive on the so-called principle he's acting on.
So did Phlox make that decision, or did Archer?
Phlox refused to obey Captain Archer's order to develop and distribute a cure to this disease. and then Captain Archer says he respects his decision, so he doesn't get in trouble for it. Now, if I was Captain Archer, I would have thrown Dr. Phlox off the ship, if not into space, but probably at least off the ship. I wouldn't have trusted that guy further than I could have thrown him, and I probably wouldn't have let him remain as the chief medical officer past the first episode, as far as I'm concerned. But certainly, I would have let him go at that point and gotten a doctor who was going to be a doctor instead of trying to be a genocidal politician. I think that Dr. Phlox is not a good guy. I think he's a villain. The actor who played Dr. Phlox is a competent actor, and I'd probably hire him to play a villain in any film that I'm trying to make. But he's a villain, as far as I'm concerned. He's the bad guy.
Wow.
So that's worst episode of Star Trek ever right there.
It's interesting how you pick your best and worst, mostly because of the messages they're sending or the plots or whatever, the philosophy behind it, things like that.
Well,
I picked the top mostly because
the top
of,
two were the philosophy, but the rest of them were
mine. I
plot.
picked them whether or not they're entertaining or boring or whatever.
Yeah.
Not so much the philosophy behind them. For example, my number one episode,
Yes,
is the worst episode ever, is Move Along Home. Deep Space Nine. And I know you actually enjoy that one.
Oh, I'm so sad.
Why? Because it's so silly. It's stupid. You feel almost embarrassed watching it. Watching them go through the Alamarain dance. Oh my gosh.
Okay. We'll discuss the reasons why I like that one later.
Yeah, 'cause I have a feeling it might come up again.
Yeah, but but I kind of see where you're coming from though, because it's silly and
you feel embarrassed for the actors having to do the stuff they're doing.
Silliness on Star Trek either works or it fails so badly that it just.
I mean, you look at an original series episode like The Trouble with Tribbles. It's a silly episode, but it's very entertaining and it's funny and it works.
Yeah.
This, no, it just didn't.
Like on Doctor Who.
In fact, it didn't work so much that ever since then, for the rest of the run of Deep Space Nine, on the set, whenever something went wrong, the actors would call out Alamarain.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Well, I didn't think it was that bad, but I'll talk about that later. But I might just say humor in Star Trek, it's either okay or it's terrible. There's no in between, you know? Like in Doctor Who, if they do a silly Doctor Who episode, we might watch that and be like, it was okay to watch it once, but it wasn't that great. If they try to do a silly episode and the silliness falls flat on Doctor Who, it's okay. But when they try to do a silly episode in Star Trek and the silliness falls flat, it is a terrible, terrible episode. You know what I mean?
And I know you kind of like the episode, which we're going to talk about later on.
Yeah.
Because of the relationship between Odo and Quark in it. But, I kind of set that aside and say, it's God, it's so stupid.
Yeah. So do we still have time to do our top 5?
We are going to have to wrap this one up. So next time we'll be hitting the top 5. Keep you all in suspense. So thank you all for listening. You can find us at Trekosophy.com, on Facebook, and on Twitter. You can also send us an email to Trekosophy@gmail.com. Please leave us a review in the iTunes store. Send us any questions, comments, topic ideas, anything like that. We'll definitely take it under consideration and join us next time. So for Ben McLean and Ash Hume, I'm Chris McGee. See you next time.
Same Trek time, same Trek channel.
Alamarain, Canto 4, Alamarain, then 3 more, Alamarain. If you can't see Alamarain, you come with me.
Oh, wow. I couldn't have done that from memory. Very good. You get applause.
You shall have no treaty, no vaccine, and no Lieutenant Yaw.